The archives that everyone forgot. The job nobody wanted. Marcus Webb had always loved quiet places. Libraries, archives, old bookstores with dust floating in afternoon sunlight. So when he saw a job posting for an archivist position on a space station, he applied immediately. The pay was decent. The location was exotic. And best of all, the job description said minimal interaction with others required. Perfect for someone who preferred books to people. What Marcus didn't know was that he was the only applicant. Nobody else wanted the job because the Galactic Central Archives were considered the most boring assignment in the entire frontier sector. Thousands of years of recorded history, sitting in digital storage, rarely accessed, mostly forgotten. Marcus arrived at Station Kepler 7 on a Tuesday. The station was huge, home to over 50,000 beings from 100 different species. But the archives were in the oldest section, far from the busy commercial districts and entertainment zones. The halls were empty. The lights flickered. And when Marcus found the archive entrance, he had to clear cobwebs from the door panel. Inside was worse. Or better, depending on your perspective. Row after row of data storage units, stretching into darkness. Holographic displays covered in dust. Reading stations that hadn't been used in decades. To most people, it would have looked like a graveyard. To Marcus, it looked like paradise. Meeting the past. His supervisor was an elderly Kaltorian named Prex. She had worked in the archives for 60 years and seemed relieved that someone had finally shown up to help. Most of what we have is in the old format, Prex explained, her translator converting her melodic speech into English. Digital files from civilizations that no longer exist. Languages that nobody speaks anymore. History that nobody cares about anymore. Why doesn't anybody care? Marcus asked, genuinely confused. Prex made a sound that might have been a laugh. Because the galaxy moves forward, Marcus. People care about today's news, today's problems, today's entertainment. Who has time for ancient history? Who wants to read about wars that ended 1,000 years ago or civilizations that disappeared before humans even learned to make fire? Marcus looked around the vast archive and felt something stirring in his chest. Sadness, maybe. Or anger. All this knowledge, all these stories, just sitting here in the dark. I care, he said quietly. Prex studied him for a long moment. Then she smiled. Good. Then maybe you're the right person for this job after all. The discovery. Marcus spent his first month learning the archive systems. They were old, incredibly old, but surprisingly well designed. Once you understood the logic, you could find anything. Records from the Vouth Empire. Scientific papers from the Xantharian Golden Age. Personal journals from explorers who'd charted unknown space centuries ago. Every document was a window into a different world. Marcus would lose entire days reading about ancient trade disputes, forgotten religions, extinct species. His co-workers, the few times he saw them, thought he was strange. Who reads old tax records for fun? Who gets excited about diplomatic correspondence from 2,000 years ago? Marcus did. Because unlike everyone else, he understood something important. The past wasn't dead. It was just sleeping, waiting for someone to wake it up. The discovery happened on a random Thursday. Marcus was cataloging files from the Third Kaltorian dynasty when he noticed something odd. A reference to something called the Silence Protocol. It appeared in dozens of documents, always in passing, never explained. Marcus started digging. He spent a week following the trail, connecting references, building a timeline. What he found made his blood run cold. 800 years ago, there had been a pandemic. Not a biological one, but something worse. A digital virus that spread through communication networks, corrupting data, destroying records. It had swept across the galaxy, hitting every major civilization. And in response, something called the Silence Protocol had been activated. But here was the terrifying part, Marcus couldn't find any records of what the Silence Protocol actually did. Every document that should have explained it was corrupted or deleted. It was like someone had deliberately erased the information. The pattern. Marcus brought his findings to Prex. The old Keltorian listened carefully, her expression growing more serious with each word. "I've heard whispers about this," she admitted. "Old archivists talking late at night. But I always thought it was just legend. Stories we tell to make our work seem more important." "It's not a legend," Marcus insisted, showing her the data. "Look at the pattern. The virus spread for 3 months. Then suddenly, it stopped. Every record from that period shows the same thing, civilizations activating the silence protocol, and then nothing. No more virus. But also, no explanation of how they stopped it." Prex studied the timeline. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking the silence protocol worked. They stopped the virus. But they also erased something important. And I think I know what." Marcus pulled up another display, showing historical records from before and after the virus. "Look at the scientific progress. Before the virus, civilizations were advancing rapidly. New technologies every year. Then after the silence protocol, progress slowed dramatically. It took 200 years to redevelop technologies they'd had before the virus." "They lost knowledge," Prex breathed. "Not lost. Erased. The silence protocol must have deleted infected files to stop the virus from spreading. But it couldn't tell the difference between infected knowledge and clean knowledge. So it deleted everything. Centuries of research, discoveries, cultural records. Gone." The two of them stood in silence, contemplating the horror of it. An entire civilization's collective memory, erased to save itself. "Why does this matter now?" Prex asked quietly. "This happened 800 years ago. The knowledge is gone." Marcus smiled. "Maybe not. I've been analyzing the virus patterns. It spread through active networks, corrupting files that were being accessed and transmitted. But archives like this? Remote storage facilities that nobody visited? They might have been protected. The virus couldn't reach files that weren't connected to anything." He pulled up a map of the galaxy, marking locations. There were 73 major archive facilities across civilized space 800 years ago. Most were shut down after the silence protocol, deemed too dangerous to access. But some of them might still exist. And if they do, they might still contain the knowledge everyone thought was lost. The warning. Marcus spent the next month trying to locate the old archive facilities. Most were destroyed. Some had been converted to other uses. But 6 of them, 6 remote installations in forgotten corners of space, were still there. Abandoned, sealed, waiting. He wrote a report. A detailed analysis of the silence protocol, the lost knowledge, and the locations of potentially intact archives. He submitted it to the Galactic Historical Society, expecting immediate action. Instead, he got a visit from security. 2 agents arrived at the archives, both Vraxian, both looking very serious. They asked Marcus to come with them. When Prex objected, they politely but firmly insisted. Marcus was taken to a secure conference room deep in the station's administrative sector. There, he met Director Koth, the head of station security. "Mr. Webb," Koth said, his translator producing crisp, professional tones. "Your report has caused quite a stir. We need to discuss what you've discovered." "I thought you'd be excited," Marcus said, confused. "We could recover lost knowledge, technologies that were erased. This could benefit everyone. Or it could kill everyone," Koth replied. "The silence protocol was activated for a reason. Those archives were sealed for a reason. You're suggesting we open facilities that might still contain active virus code. Code that could start another pandemic, one we might not be able to stop this time." Marcus hadn't thought of that. He felt foolish suddenly, like a kid who'd found something dangerous and didn't understand the risk. "But the knowledge," he protested weakly. "Knowledge isn't worth the risk if it destroys civilization," Koth said, not unkindly. "I understand your passion, Mr. Webb. But some doors should stay closed. Marcus was escorted back to the archives. His report was classified. His findings were sealed. And he was strongly advised to never speak about the silence protocol again. He should have listened. He should have gone back to his quiet work, cataloging old files, staying out of trouble. But Marcus had never been good at leaving mysteries unsolved. The decision. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about those sealed archives. All that knowledge, just sitting there. Discoveries that could cure diseases, technologies that could improve lives, history that could teach important lessons. All locked away because people were afraid. Maybe they were right to be afraid. Maybe the risk was too great. Or maybe fear had kept humanity from achieving greatness too many times already. Marcus made a decision. A reckless, possibly stupid decision. But sometimes the right choice isn't the safe choice. He was going to open one of those archives. Not all of them. Just one. He would do it carefully, with proper precautions. If there was virus code, he wouldn't let it spread. But he had to know what was there. He had to see if the lost knowledge could be recovered. He started planning. Researching the nearest sealed facility. Figuring out how to get there. Preparing equipment. He told no one, not even Prex. This was his responsibility, his risk. 3 weeks later, Marcus requested vacation time. He'd saved up credits. He rented a small ship, telling the rental company he was going sightseeing. Then he set course for the outer rim, toward coordinates that existed only in 800-year-old records. Toward an archive that everyone had forgotten. Toward knowledge that might save the galaxy or doom it. As Marcus flew into deep space, leaving station Kepler 7 behind, he thought about all the librarians and archivists who'd come before him. People who'd devoted their lives to preserving knowledge, protecting history, keeping the past alive for future generations. He hoped they'd be proud of what he was about to do. He hoped he wasn't making a terrible mistake, the truth behind the silence. The forgotten facility. The archive facility was exactly where the old records said it would be, orbiting a dead planet in a system nobody visited. It was a small station, maybe a tenth the size of Kepler 7, covered in centuries of space dust and micrometeorite damage. Marcus approached carefully, scanning for active systems. Nothing. The station was completely dead, no power, no life support, no communications. It hung in space like a tomb. He docked his rented ship and suited up in his environmental gear. The airlock took 3 tries to open. Ancient mechanisms grinding, protesting, finally yielding. Marcus stepped inside, his suit lights cutting through absolute darkness. The facility was pristine. Not damaged, just untouched. Emergency lighting flickered on as his presence triggered ancient sensors. Row after row of data storage units stretched into the shadows, identical to the archives at Kepler 7 but scaled down. This was a backup facility, a redundant system meant to preserve copies of important files. Marcus found a working terminal and connected his portable power supply. The system came online slowly, displays flickering with 800-year-old interface designs. He started carefully, running diagnostics, checking for virus signatures. Nothing. The files were clean. Marcus felt his heart racing. This was it. He'd found intact data from before the silence protocol. Knowledge that everyone thought was lost forever. He started downloading. Scientific papers. Technical manuals. Historical records. Gigabytes of information flowing into his storage devices. And as he read through the files, Marcus realized he'd found something extraordinary. The lost knowledge wasn't just minor research. It was breakthrough discoveries. Medical treatments that could cure diseases still plaguing the galaxy. Energy technologies that were cleaner and more efficient than anything currently used. Agricultural methods that could feed billions more people. This wasn't just history. This was hope. The hidden message. Marcus spent hours in the facility, cataloging and copying files. He was so focused on the work that he almost missed it. A small file, flagged with maximum priority, buried deep in the system. The file was labeled "Warning, read before accessing any other data." Marcus opened it. What he found changed everything. The file was a message, recorded by the archive facility's last director before the silence protocol was activated. Her name was Dr. Shira Vex, a Vraxian scientist. Her holographic image appeared, looking exhausted and frightened. "If you're watching this," Dr. Vex said, "then you've found one of the sealed archives. You've probably already copied files. And if you've done that, I need you to understand something crucial. The virus wasn't random. It was intelligent." Marcus felt cold fear spreading through his chest. Dr. Vex continued, "We called it the silence virus, but that name doesn't capture what it really was. It wasn't designed to destroy data. It was designed to hide. To embed itself in useful, important files. Files that people would want to preserve, want to share, want to use." The hologram showed data patterns, virus code woven invisibly into scientific papers and technical documents. The virus spreads when infected files are accessed and transmitted. But it's patient. It can wait centuries, dormant, until conditions are right. And when it activates, it doesn't just corrupt random data. It targets specific types of information. Historical records. Scientific knowledge. Cultural archives. Why? Marcus whispered, though the recording couldn't hear him. As if answering, Dr. Vex said, "We never figured out why. But the pattern was clear. The virus was systematically erasing the galaxy's collective memory, targeting the knowledge that held civilizations together. Someone or something created this weapon deliberately. An attack not on individuals, but on the very concept of civilization itself." The hologram's expression grew even more serious. "The silence protocol was our only option. Erase everything, infected and clean, to stop the spread. We knew we were setting ourselves back centuries. But the alternative was losing everything forever." Dr. Vex paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was softer. "But I couldn't let all the knowledge die. So I hid backup copies in facilities like this one. Sealed, isolated, hopefully safe. If you're accessing this, you have a choice. You can use this knowledge, share it, let it benefit the galaxy again. But you must be careful. Check every file. Verify every line of code. Because if the virus is still active, if even one infected file spreads, we could face another pandemic." The message ended with coordinates and encryption keys to other sealed facilities. Dr. Vex had left a network of hidden archives, a secret library containing the galaxy's stolen past. Marcus sat in darkness, processing what he'd learned. He had the knowledge. He had the truth. But he also had an impossible responsibility. The choice. Marcus spent 2 days at the facility, running every diagnostic he could think of. Scanning files. Looking for virus signatures. Checking and double-checking. The files seemed clean. His equipment detected no trace of the silence virus. But Dr. Vex's warning haunted him. What if he missed something? What if the virus was more sophisticated than his scanners could detect? He could destroy everything. Delete all the files, seal the facility again, pretend he'd never found it. That would be the safe choice. The responsible choice. But all that knowledge would be lost. Cures for diseases. Solutions to problems. History that could teach crucial lessons. Gone forever. Or he could take the risk. Bring the knowledge back. Share it carefully, with proper precautions. Trust that 800 years of technological advancement had given them better tools to detect and stop the virus. Marcus thought about why he'd become an archivist. Not for excitement or fame. But because he believed knowledge mattered. Because he believed the past had value, that history taught lessons worth learning, that forgotten discoveries deserved a second chance. He made his choice. The return. Marcus returned to Station Kepler 7 3 weeks after he'd left. He went immediately to Prex, told her everything, and showed her the files he'd recovered. Then together, they went to Director Koff. The security director was furious at first. Marcus had violated direct orders, accessed sealed facilities, potentially exposed the station to catastrophic risk. But when he saw Dr. Vex's message, saw the knowledge Marcus had recovered, his anger shifted to careful consideration. "This needs to go higher," Koff said. "The Galactic Council needs to make this decision, not me." Over the next month, Marcus found himself at the center of the galaxy's biggest controversy. Scientists wanted to access the recovered knowledge immediately. Security experts demanded everything be destroyed. Politicians argued about jurisdiction and responsibility. Marcus testified before committees. He shared Dr. Vex's message. He explained the potential benefits and the real risks. He advocated for careful, systematic analysis of the recovered files, using modern technology to detect any trace of virus code. The debates were intense. Passionate arguments on both sides. Fear versus hope. Safety versus progress. The compromise. The final decision was a compromise that nobody loved but everyone could accept. The recovered knowledge would be analyzed, but slowly and carefully. Teams of experts would review every file, checking for virus signatures, verifying data integrity. Nothing would be released until it was absolutely confirmed safe. The process would take years. Maybe decades. But it would be done right. Marcus was appointed head of the Archive Recovery Project. It wasn't the quiet job he'd originally wanted. Instead, he found himself managing teams of researchers, coordinating with security experts, navigating political complexities he'd never imagined. But he was also doing something that mattered. Slowly, carefully, they were recovering lost knowledge. Medical research that led to new treatments. Energy technologies that were adapted for modern use. Historical records that filled in blank spaces in galactic history. Not all at once. Not recklessly. But steadily, patiently, the way a good librarian would work. The legacy. 5 years after Marcus's discovery, the first major breakthrough was announced. A medical treatment recovered from the archives, verified safe, tested thoroughly. It cured a disease that had plagued the Kaltorian people for generations. Prex was in the audience when the announcement was made, tears streaming down her face. "You did this," she told Marcus afterward. "We did this," Marcus corrected. "You taught me that knowledge matters. That the past has value. I just followed through." More discoveries followed. Slowly but surely. Each one carefully verified, thoroughly tested, properly integrated into modern galactic civilization. The lost knowledge was coming back, piece by piece. Marcus never found out who created the silence virus or why. That mystery remained unsolved. But he'd found something more important, proof that knowledge could survive, that history could be recovered, that the past could help build a better future. The warning that remained. Marcus kept Dr. Vex's message, the original holographic recording, in a secure location. He showed it to every new researcher who joined the Archive Recovery Project. A reminder of the risks they faced, the responsibility they carried. Because the truth was, they never found all the virus code. Despite 5 years of searching, despite the most sophisticated detection equipment, there were still files they couldn't fully verify. Data that might be safe or might be dangerous. Some knowledge remained sealed. Some archives were left unopened. Not forever, but until technology advanced enough to guarantee safety. It was frustrating. Like solving 90% of a puzzle but never finishing. But Marcus had learned that being an archivist meant accepting incomplete victories. Sometimes preserving knowledge meant protecting people from it. Sometimes the right choice was patience. 10 years later, Marcus stood in the rebuilt archive facility at Station Kepler 7. It wasn't forgotten anymore. The archives had become famous, the source of recovered knowledge that was changing the galaxy. Students came to research. Scientists came to access original documents. The halls that had been empty were now bustling with activity. Prex had retired, finally, after 70 years of service. But she visited often, smiling to see the archives alive again. Marcus trained new archivists now. Young beings from a dozen species who wanted to work with ancient knowledge. He taught them the technical skills, of course. How to analyze data, detect corruption, verify authenticity. But he also taught them something else. Something he'd learned the hard way. Knowledge is power, he would tell them. But it's also responsibility. Every piece of information you preserve, every file you recover, every discovery you share, it has consequences. Good ones, we hope. But sometimes dangerous ones. Your job isn't just to find knowledge. It's to understand it, to protect it, and to share it wisely. He would pause, looking at their eager faces. And sometimes, your job is to leave knowledge hidden. Not forever, but until the right time. That's the hardest part. Knowing that you found something amazing and choosing not to share it yet. Choosing patience over glory. Safety over pride. The final discovery. On the 10th anniversary of his original discovery, Marcus received a message from deep space. An automated signal, triggered by specific conditions. It took him a week to trace the source, one of the sealed archive facilities that Dr. Vex had hidden. The facility had detected something. A pattern in galactic communications networks. Something that looked like silence virus signatures. Marcus assembled his team immediately. They analyzed the data, ran comparisons, checked and rechecked. The conclusion was terrifying. Somewhere in the galaxy, infected files were spreading again. Not an outbreak, not yet. Just isolated incidents. But the pattern was there. The silence virus wasn't dead. It had been sleeping, waiting, hidden in files that had seemed safe. Marcus faced another choice. He could raise the alarm, trigger galaxy-wide panic, demand immediate action. Or he could work quietly, trace the spread, contain it before it became a crisis. He chose the middle path. He informed the Galactic Council, but he also proposed a plan. Use the recovered knowledge, the understanding they'd gained from Dr. Vex's research, to develop better detection methods. Build a new defense system, one that could identify and quarantine infected files without erasing everything. It took 2 years, but they did it. A network of monitoring stations, using recovered technology combined with modern innovations, scanning galactic communications for virus signatures. When infections were detected, they were isolated immediately, contained before they could spread. The galaxy never knew how close they'd come to another pandemic. Marcus made sure of that. No panic, no fear, just quiet, professional work by people who understood the threat and knew how to handle it. The truth about silence. Marcus eventually figured out the truth about the silence virus. Not who created it, but why. The answer was buried in recovered philosophical texts from an ancient civilization, one that had disappeared long before humans developed writing. The virus wasn't a weapon of destruction. It was a weapon of control. By selectively erasing knowledge, by forcing civilizations to forget their past, it made them easier to manipulate. Populations without history were populations without identity. Without cultural memory. Without the lessons learned from past mistakes. Someone had tried to reset galactic civilization. To create a blank slate that could be reshaped according to their design. They'd failed, but barely. The silence protocol had stopped them, at terrible cost. And the virus remained, waiting for another opportunity. Marcus added this finding to the secure archives. Knowledge that future generations would need. A warning about the value of history, the importance of memory, the dangers of forgetting. The legacy continues. Marcus eventually retired from active work, but he never stopped being an archivist. He wrote papers. He taught classes. He advised new generations of researchers. And he kept watch over the sealed archives, the knowledge that still waited to be safely recovered. The galaxy had changed because of his work. Recovered knowledge led to medical breakthroughs, technological innovations, cultural rediscoveries. But more importantly, it had reminded everyone that the past mattered. That history had value. That forgotten knowledge deserved protection. Libraries and archives across the galaxy were renovated, funded, celebrated. Being an archivist went from being the job nobody wanted to being respected, important work. Young beings applied in record numbers, inspired by Marcus's story. He tried to tell them it wasn't about him. That he'd just been doing his job. That any good archivist would have made the same choices. But deep down, Marcus knew the truth. He'd taken risks that others wouldn't. He'd made choices that changed everything. Not because he was brave or special, but because he understood something fundamental. Knowledge was worth fighting for. History was worth preserving. And sometimes, one person who cared enough could make a difference. The final message. In his last years, Marcus recorded his own message for future archivists. A holographic record, similar to Dr. Vek's warning, meant to be preserved and shared. If you're watching this, Marcus said, his older face smiling gently, then you've probably found yourself facing an impossible choice. Safety or knowledge? Caution or progress? The comfortable path or the right path? He leaned forward, his expression serious. I can't tell you what to choose. Every situation is different. But I can tell you this, knowledge matters. History matters. The past isn't dead, it's alive in every choice we make, every lesson we learn, every mistake we avoid because someone before us made it first. Marcus paused. But knowledge without wisdom is dangerous. Power without responsibility is destructive. So when you face those impossible choices, remember this, you're not just an archivist. You're a guardian. Protecting knowledge for those who will come after. And sometimes, protecting knowledge means being patient with it. Waiting for the right time. Trusting that if it's truly valuable, it will still be there when the galaxy is ready for it. He smiled again. Dr. Vex left us a gift. The knowledge she preserved changed the galaxy. But her greatest gift was the choice. She didn't force anyone to open those archives. She left them hidden, waiting for someone who would be careful enough, wise enough, responsible enough to use them properly. That's your job too. Not just to find knowledge, but to understand when to share it and when to protect it. That's what makes you an archivist. That's what makes this work matter. The recording ended with Marcus sitting in the archives at Station Kepler 7, surrounded by the history he'd spent his life protecting. Still doing what he loved. Still believing it mattered.